Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Canon Bryan, Alexander Canon Bryan. He's one of my best friends in the nuclear space. He has been my conduit into the nuclear world when I started writing books. And today we're going to talk about a subject that we both study with great interest, and that's basically how the forces against nuclear uh, got some wind in their sails. So first, Cannon, please introduce yourself, and then we can talk about the subject of today.
Oh, thank you, Tease. Thanks for that warm introduction. My name is Canon Bryan. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of a company called Terrestrial Energy. We're developing advanced nuclear technology for global commercial deployment. And my background is 30 years in finance, mostly in natural resources and energy. And I've spent the last 20 years primarily focused on nuclear energy and nuclear technology. So that's a bit of my background.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've known each other for like at least 10 years. It feels like.
Yeah, around 10 years, I think.
And I've had this YouTube channel for at least 7, and I never had you on.
Amazing.
Yeah, so today I rented the video at Prime, so because you have to rent it, I'm not going to pay $10 for it. That's for sure. But I rented the China Syndrome film, and the reason why I rented the China Syndrome film, was because you often told me how damaging the film and the aftermath of the film, what happened because of some activism was.
Mhm.
And I must say, I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that it was such a well directed film.
It's very well made film. Yes, it's very
Yeah,
entertaining. I mean, it's totally
exactly.
accomplishes its objective of being entertaining.
Because I rented it and I was thinking, oh God, I don't want to like this. I don't want to like this. But I ended up liking it much more than I initially thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a political intrigue, it's really it's and even like a sort of a thriller. It is an excellent production, and of course, I love Michael Douglas, who produced the film and starred in the film. Jack Lemmon is absolutely, extraordinary as usual in his role. So yeah, there's a lot to like about the film, that's for sure.
Yeah, it also features Jane Fonda, who's she has become a force. I wouldn't say a force of evil, but it,
Well,
she did it with the best intentions. But
yes, I mean that's kind of the problem, isn't it? I mean, uh, I would say uh, she is the worst kind of evil. Unfortunately, the people that are that they people that act and with what in their minds are the best intentions, right? They think they're doing something really, really good and beneficent, and but in actual fact, they have no clue, no understanding of how much damage they're causing, how many lives are being lost because of their actions. I mean, you could even say this about Hitler and Nazi Germany. They thought they were doing a good thing. They thought, we're whatever their philosophy was. We're ridding the earth of the um,
an
contaminated
evil, yeah,
races or whatever. They thought they were doing a good thing, and well, of course, through the lens of history, and any rational person at the time clearly observed that they were not doing the right thing.
yes,
And so when you have someone like Jane Fonda who thinks they are acting in the best interests of human civilization, but the outcome of their actions is the exact opposite. That is the person that terrifies me, right? The person who's the criminal who goes out and commits violent crimes, and they're just angry and violent. Okay, I mean those people are understandable. They could possibly even be they can be reformed and whatnot.
mm,
But the person who doesn't know the extent of the damage that they're causing, and they think that it's greatness and righteousness. That person terrifies me the most, more than any violent criminal.
I mean, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, that's what they say.
It's not a phrase that arose just out of nothing.
So, I mean, in terms of Jane Fonda, she there was already an anti-nuclear movement before the film came out, and of course, for those of your listeners or audience that don't know, the film was released in broad public release on in 1979, and it just so happened, and the film is about a nuclear disaster, a nuclear power plant melting down somewhere in the United States,
which was averted at the last moment.
Yeah, but and ultimately it was a crisis in a nuclear power plant in a nuclear reactor, and just following that story, and the in the real world, 12 days later, the Three Mile Island accident occurred, and so I think it would be safe to say that the nuclear energy industry in the U.S. and maybe elsewhere had already been in decline throughout the 70s because of anti-nuclear activism, and that anti-nuclear activism was really associated with nuclear weapons, opposition to nuclear weapons, and the activists, the advocates, they didn't really comprehend the difference between nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. And I mean, maybe they can be forgiven for that. The nuclear energy industry wasn't doing a particularly good job of explaining those differences. So, I mean, this is all circumstantial. So I think you could safely say that the nuclear energy industry in the US was in decline throughout the 70s, not for any technical reasons, not for any economic reasons or any normal reasons that would cause an energy technology to fail. But when the film came out and the 3 Mile Island accident happened right on top of that film release, the industry went from being in decline to being in a free fall.
Terminal, right?
Yeah, terminal velocity.
I mean, it's the perfect storm if you look at it, because that's the way the film is set up. The film is set up so that any.
Oh, it was definitely, yeah. I think the film was definitely created as a political statement by Jane Fonda and maybe Michael Douglas as well, who's the producer of the film.
Nobody can be trusted.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, well, I mean, I think they were trying to paint the nuclear energy industry as a dark figure, some black mass that was had evil intentions.
Total disregard for public safety.
Yeah, just disregarding public safety and so on.
And the worst part about the film is, I think, at one point, what is his name? Lemon. I only know his last name.
Jack Lemmon.
Yeah, he is in the film. He is like the shift manager, and he feels this shake. So he goes on this self-actuated journey where he starts looking at these X-ray pictures, and then he discovers that all the X-ray pictures of different welds are actually the same picture. And then he confronts the man who made those X-rays, and basically he gets pursued by these goons, and the goons end up driving another kid from the road who, there was a handoff and everything. So I mean, this is a really dark place that the film is going. Like they want to get this nuclear at all cost.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an unfair representation and just a not accurate representation of the industry at that time. I think the industry could be accused of being too insular and not communicating the benefits to society of nuclear energy technology. I think that's a fair statement. And but to say that they're some insidious cabal or conspiracy minded people operating underneath the regulations and so forth. I mean, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
That never happened. But it's a film, and in a film, you can do whatever you want. You can, right? It's fiction, and that's what they were doing. But Jane Fonda clearly had a political motive for making the film. There's no doubt about that. And she got lucky because she achieved her objective, her political objective, by having an actual accident happen 12 days after the release of her film.
Incredible, isn't it? Incredible.
So, the outcome was that virtually all new nuclear build in the United States ceased. So at one point in time in the 70s, there were 1,000 nuclear power plants that were planned, that they were going to be built. And so most of those were canceled because of this. And if you want to go and look at statistics, you can go to the U.S. Department of Energy Information Administration, and you can look at, for example, the number of the workforce in the uranium mining industry. It went from 1979, 1980, it was like 20,000 people. And then in 1981, it went down to like 200.
Oh my God.
So the entire uranium mining industry was just laid off as en masse.
Yeah.
Just one indicator that comes to my mind. So it was really it was really effective. This effort to cancel the industry, and all these planned nuclear power plant builds were canceled, and the U.S. ended up with about 110 or so nuclear power plants by the end of the 1980s, and which was about 20% of the total electricity generated in the United States. So, obviously it could have been so much more. If you look at France and what they achieved with their build program in the 1970s and 80s, they got to 80% of their total electricity. They were not swayed by political nonsense, and they were following the facts of nuclear energy and responding, of course, to the oil shock, which happened in the early 70s.
This is so interesting, because I want to look into this. What the build rate per capita was for France and for the United States. I'm willing to bet that we haven't even seen the best that the United States could do.
No, certainly not. I mean, the whole thing was starting as I said, in the early 70s. There was already opposition growing, and this was causing problems for the industry, legal problems. There was, interference at the community level, and of course, all of that community opposition was not the actual members of those communities where those nuclear power plant sites were. These were invaders, right? Interlopers from Greenpeace and the Union of Concerned Scientists and so forth, all funded by big oil. And that's not even a wacky conspiracy theory anymore. That's been borne out by people like Rod Adams and others with data. So
I've got an interloper. Yeah. It's coming into screen in a second now. And I'm not going to cut this out, because we're doing this for Christmas. Come on, please. So the interesting thing here is that we have this moment in time where you basically get two or three. You get these branch off points, right? So what you get is that at one point, you have the 3 Mile Island incident, and you get the movie.
Well, that was catalytic.
Yeah, the China syndrome, and then you get this bifurcation point where in one branch you get the soul searching that the nuclear industry is going to do. They for instance, they start with WANO, the World Association of Nuclear Operators, right?
Yes.
And on the other hand, you get this massive swelling of anti-nuclear sentiment, right? Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting thing to talk about, because what I've seen come out of this whole situation, not on the nuclear side, but on the anti-nuclear side, is is this groundswell of anti-nuclearism. Can you tell us something more about this? About all the tours and the hundreds of thousands of people showing up everywhere, and
Oh, well, it was an extremely sophisticated program of anti-nuclear advocacy on a grand scale, and it was very well funded and very sophisticated and very broadly deployed. They basically go on tour, community to community, uh, organizing protests and making sure everybody knew
yeah,
that
with
the
stages and music and
yeah, all the rest of it. Yeah, and it was all in the name of peace, right? It was all the big suggestion is we're good actors. We're doing this because we really believe that nuclear energy is the devil, and it will bring nothing but ruination on our. It'll bring the pyramid down on our heads if we carry forward with this insidious plan. And again, all these people thought that they were doing the righteous thing, but the reality is that they accelerated climate change, which is something that didn't even exist in the 70s. Because
ironic.
yeah, and you can go and read a very good paper by Peter Lang
I
from
know it.
Australia,
Yeah, I
which
know
makes a
it.
strong case with lots of data showing the learning curve of nuclear power plant construction, both schedule and costs, going right back to the 1960s. And I think they studied 7 different countries
Yep.
and their build programs during that time. And what they found out was that the learning curve was accelerating, and costs were declining. Schedule or time to construction was declining. All of these were on the right track, and until it got interrupted in the early 1970s by this opposition. And then you found that the costs started to increase. Everything started going in the opposite direction. Costs increased, construction times increased, and the thesis statement that Lang et al. Makes is that had the learning curves not been interrupted by this opposition, nuclear power plant construction would have continued and accelerated, and there would have been much less need to build coal plants.
Yeah.
And I guess that could also go for natural gas plants as well. But there was just a far lower need for fossil fuels because there would have been so much nuclear power. And
acceptance would have been much broader. So it would have been much easier to add more nuclear whenever we needed more baseload power.
I mean, that's kind of implied. But the final conclusion that Lang makes is that had this alternate history unfolded and those learning curves continued, there would be no such thing as climate change. We would not have ever heard the term climate change.
That's weird.
Because our energy production would be so clean, or at least for electricity, that we would not be grappling with this civilization-wide problem that we have today. So it's just a perfect example of how these activists who were campaigning for peace, which is we can all agree that peace is a good thing. We all want peace. We love peace, but they were using the wrong mechanisms, and they had a flawed.
They were pulling the wrong lever.
Yeah, they were pulling the wrong levers, and they ended up causing far more damage than ever could have imagined. So that's just really unfortunate. And Jane Fonda, in my mind, is really sort of at the center of all of this, and so she really a big catalyst.
She became the figurehead for this whole movement, in a sense.
Yes, exactly. So, but hey, let's end on a good note, because approximately 3 months ago or so, Microsoft made a quite shocking announcement, I think.
Landmark deal.
To anyone in the industry, any industry observer, Microsoft announced that they would do a deal with Constellation Energy, who owns the recently decommissioned 3 Mile Island Unit 2, which is, so 3 Mile Island was 2 units. 3 Mile Island 1 melted down. It had a small meltdown. They determined that there was no harm to the local community. The radiation escape into the environment was about equal to one chest X-ray, so obviously not harmful. And but 3 Mile Island 2 continued to operate until 5 years ago, until 2019. And the magic of this announcement, the symbolic nature of it, was such that the date of the announcement that was made by Microsoft and Constellation was precisely 5 years to the day of the decommissioning date of 3 Mile Island 2. And they renamed it the Christopher Crane Energy Center, or something
really?
like that, named after the former CEO, I guess, of Constellation. And it was in my mind, it was a miracle that was absolutely not possible a year or two before.
With all the negative baggage, I mean, yeah, I would have expected, large protests to erupt. That would have not been out of extraordinary if that would have happened.
But because it was Microsoft,
yeah,
because they converted let's face it, let's call it what it is, the most feared industrial facility in the United States, the most terrifying industrial facility in the country. And they, in a heartbeat, with one news release, they converted that into a tech center.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So
absolutely amazing.
So it's really, the symbolism cannot be overstated in my mind. And it really, I think in my mind, and maybe others as well, the catalytic nature of the 3 Mile Island meltdown in 1979 is equaled now in power of the catalytic nature of this announcement with Microsoft, but in the opposite direction. Whereas 3 Mile Island sent the entire industry into a free fall, this Microsoft announcement now triggers for the industry skyrocket.
I mean, not average Joes who are, not invested in this whole nuclear industry biosphere, so to say. You, as somebody who works in the nuclear industry, who's a chief financial officer, who's in the know, who follows all this news that has to do with all this stuff, you must see signals that things must have turned around, right?
Oh yes, there's zero question. I mean, yes, you're right. I have about 40 Google alerts, 40 terms that I have Google alerts for. So I get, and I've had them coming into my inbox every day for as long as Google Alerts has been around. Well, let's say 15 years.
It's a good way to stay in the loop.
And many other, news bulletins and things coming into my inbox every single day. I read all the headlines at least. Sometimes I will click through and read the actual articles themselves. But the point is, yes, I have been super vigilant of the entire industry. It's my industry. It's my job, in effect, as the founder of a nuclear technology company, to study the industry closely and try to spot trends and, try to have informed decision making for the company and for our shareholders. And there's zero question that my first 15 years, or my first 20 years in this industry, which have mostly been swimming upstream, are now starting to go in the opposite direction. Whereas we have faced headwinds for as long as I've been in the industry, we're now starting to enjoy some tailwinds.
Yeah.
And that, that's everything from industries that that have heretofore never had anything to do with nuclear energy, have never considered nuclear energy as an energy source, or have even vehemently opposed and ignored nuclear energy as a potential energy source, are now at least contemplating it, and many of them are taking action and, yes, making commitments. And so this is, of course, critically important for the industry. This is what we need to move the industry forward and deploy new technologies. So it is actually very exciting and validating for me, someone who spent, let's call it 18 years working on nuclear technology, which when I started, that wasn't not a thing. There was no, there was no nuclear technology sector per se, that nobody was pursuing new technology. There was a nuclear energy industry of, sort of 400 nuclear power plants around the world that were
ossified,
quietly operating and providing loads of 24-hour a day clean energy, but nobody knew that. Nobody cared about that. And certainly nobody knew anything about nuclear technology or cared. So to go from that to where we are today, where there is, I think, a lot of interest now being created. And I would just further add that, this, in my mind, I could be wrong, but this feels to me, I've been through like structural sector rotations where you move from one giant industry to another. This feels like act one, scene one, line one of the play.
Yeah.
And that we're in for a long, prolonged, protracted period of successful and robust growth in the nuclear technology industry, such as it is today.
It's amazing that you've kept this up for so long. I remember us talking about this, time and time again in all these years that we speak, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. That there were really moments when either of us really had, dark clouds. All we saw were dark clouds, darkness in 2017, and in 2018, the only thing.
Well, 2011. I mean,
yeah.
I basically, I was done with nuclear. I wanted to get out of it altogether. I was going to go into.
That was the moment when I started picking myself up and saying, okay, I'm going to do something about this nonsense.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And so I.
But it's not that long ago. I mean, let's remember, it was like 2016, 2017, when there was no, nuclear power plants in the US were going to close. There was no foreseeable future that VC Summer or Vogel were going to get finished. I mean, it was like a really dark time. We were only losing nuclear capacity. And it turned around in the past 3-4 years. It just, and now we have the bravery of these big tech companies who go through this wall first. They have put on their chainmail, and they're braving through the breach, and they're going through this wall first, and everybody knows that the one.
I think it is somewhat out of necessity as well. So, you could say, okay, they're blazing trails, but and somebody has to do that, and that's true. But there is a gigantic need that they have, and when you start to look at the basket of potential energy solutions that they can employ into their portfolio, I mean, it starts to get very, very limited very quickly.
Yeah.
So that, in my mind, this is really a step that was absolutely essential at some point. It had to happen eventually.
And all of them,
not an if, but a when.
Yes, and all of them have been advertising that they were buying these certificates of origin from renewables for years now. But they now know that it amounts to nothing. It's good bookkeeping, but it doesn't assure.
It's optics.
Yeah,
nothing more.
It's not reliability.
In fact, it could be worse than that, because as you well know, if you overbuild solar and wind,
oh my God,
you start causing instability in the grid and so forth. It's just, it can have a negative negative impact.
I just had Meredith Angwin on, and she
Mm-hmm.
wrote a fantastic book, Shorting the Grid, in which she
Mm-hmm.
quite clearly explains how important it is to have these inertial power producers in the grid. So real power plants with spinning, with spinning machines that actually have inertia and that can put power on the grid at a moment's notice because it is needed. Because if it goes out of whack,
Mm-hmm.
if the frequency gets off too much, that's it. Bob's your uncle. The lights go off.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, it's people really underestimate how important this is, how important it is to have. Um, I mean, yes, we don't like coal and we don't like gas, but for the reliability that they offer, they're fantastic compared to renewables.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But nuclear is what we should pursue because it does not pollute the air. It does not use natural resources at a rate. I mean, yes, sure, you need to put in uranium, but uranium is so abundant.
Very abundant. Yes.
Yeah,
And yeah, once we exhaust the supplies on land, then we can go into the ocean where there's 4.5 billion metric tons of uranium in the oceans,
we'll
and
never run out.
that isn't talked about very much, but that's a fact. And the technology exists to remove that too. So, you can really. I've been trying to make the case for many years now that nuclear is a renewable resource. If you count the uranium that's in the ocean, we have enough nuclear fuel to power human civilization, 11 billion people, which is supposedly peak population according to the UN, and give every single one of those 11 billion people a Canada level of energy consumption. In other words, just a tremendously rich energy consumption, not like the global energy distribution we have today, which is
Right.
we have a lot of energy consumption in some places,
Not like they have
very, very little in others, right?
with all due respect, in Somalia or in Mozambique or
Yeah, sub-Saharan Africa and so forth. It's India. There's, I think Robert Price came up with a nice little statistic uh, which really tells the tale. And that he said that 3.5 billion people in the world use less energy than your refrigerator,
yeah,
and that's appalling. But to me, that is a humanitarian crisis,
yeah,
and we're prolonging that crisis by taking these through roads down into solar and wind, which really I think just caused a lot of delay
yeah.
in ultimately deploying the type of serious solutions that we actually need to stop this energy crisis and
Right.
to take us into the future, to have a real robust, reliable, low cost, clean energy system for the entire world, for every person
So,
in the world.
so you're sitting in front of your own product at this point, your background,
Mm-hmm.
terrestrial energy. I mean,
Yes.
I've been writing about terrestrial energy since 2014, 2015, and I've always held hope that we could start building a molten salt reactor in the early 2020s. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether we are going to do it anytime soon, but what is it? What is it? What is it that you can tell us that is promising these days? I mean, you've just signed an MOU. That's amazing.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's been a long journey, and I think it's probably been more difficult than we imagined at the beginning, but it has been uh, a journey of progress. And although have taken longer than we thought, we are definitively on a pathway, and we are doing something which has never been done before.
Hmm.
And that goes for all my colleagues and peers in the industry as well, the other nuclear technology companies. We're all doing something that's never been done before. And that is a private sector led development of new technology, which is really, regulatorily complex and technologically complex in many cases. New supply chains have to be built and created in other cases, not ours, but in some cases. So it's really, it's a well, it's a multi-factor uh, sort of problem, this set of problems that have to be overcome to achieve this. So it's I I normally compare nuclear technology to like the advent of personal computers
Mm.
in the sense of this is how universally useful they can be to human civilization. And there was a point in time in the early to mid 1970s where there were no personal computers. That didn't exist. And well, 20 years later, there was a personal computer on every desk in every school, every office, every home, in short, everywhere. And I think nuclear technology can enjoy that same level of broad society level deployment. But of course, building a nuclear power plant is a lot more difficult than building a personal computer,
Yeah.
and especially on mass. So I think our challenge is greater. I mean, you can just inherently sense that, but these are not intractable challenges. We will succeed in doing this because the need is great, and we're just starting to see the customer set, namely big tech and other industries, finally sort of begin to admit the inevitable, which is we need these technologies. We must deploy these technologies very broadly. Otherwise, we, the industries, the primary manufacturing industries and so forth, and big tech, they will not be able to grow at the rates that they need to grow to satisfy their investors. And so this is really a pivotal unlock for industrial growth in the 2030s and beyond, and they recognize that. And I mean, it's a slow recognition, but it's happening now. And companies like Microsoft, Google, uh, Meta, and Amazon and Nvidia and Oracle and so on, all coming out now and saying, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be making commitments in these technologies for these technologies. So that's the beginning. This is where
we're in the watershed. We're right in the watershed. We see the dam bursting at this moment.
It's a catalytic time, yes. So we'll see a lot of change in the industry certainly in the next 12 to 24 months. But I think this is a surge which will continue for many, many years, and a lot of value will be created in the trillions of dollars globally. So it's an excellent place to be in now, and thanks to people like me who have spent 17 years of their life sort of bringing the technology to where it is today.
You've clung on.
New market entrants and new investors can come in and be the beneficiaries of all the the agonizing work that my colleagues have put into that have invested into this technology development journey for the last 20 years.
The molten salt reactor, is it ready? Is it ready?
It's sort of as ready as it can be without a couple of missing pieces, and those are customers, sites, and capital. Now, it is very much our contention that when you have customers and you have sites, the capital will follow.
Yeah.
And some of our competitors are proving that. And so we intend to follow that pathway as well. But
I can't wait, Canon. I can't wait.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we've arrived at the moment where all of these things start to unfold finally, and they already are. You can see it in the last 3 months for our competitor companies like Oklo and TerraPower.
They did a giant announcement the other day saying something like they had a customer for potentially 19 gigawatts. 19 gigawatts.
I don't think it was 90, but there were
19.
But many of our peers are making these kind of announcements, and terrestrial energy is as well, and this is all part of the process. So, we're
I want to see the actual I want to see the actual site location decision made. That's the first, and then the announcement that there will be a project, and from then flows, the whole process flows into, up until it reaches the culmination point, which will be the final investment decision. And once you hop over that hurdle, then we're off. Then we're
yeah,
really
right.
off.
And construction begins, and the rest is history. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where we are as a sector right now. And our competitors are announcing sites. I think terrestrial energy will follow shortly. You will see that. I can't say much more,
Oh, that's all
but
right.
it's
I'm not asking you to spill the beans today.
we're all in a jet stream right now, and we're all being propelled forward, thankfully, in all of our business plans. So,
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to leave our viewers with on this nice Christmas Eve?
Well, this is a piece about Jane Fonda, I guess. So I guess Michael Douglas has, in the past 12 months, magnanimously come out and stated that he was wrong about nuclear energy. He had an error in judgment, and he now views the situation differently. He now supports nuclear energy. I would say, Jane Fonda, if you're watching, it would be nice for you to maybe admit that you as well were wrong, and that though your intentions were good, you ultimately created more damage than you
Intended.
intended to, and we would like an apology for that. The nuclear industry would like an apology and an admission of your error. So I don't think that'll happen, but that would be my Christmas wish, if you will.
Right. It's a good wish. It's a good wish. I mean, having had the opportunity to get to know people in the nuclear industry like you, but also people who actually were or are reactor operators, people who work in all sorts of all different facets of the nuclear industry. I mean, all of these people that I have met over these 10 years, all of them are good people. Every single one of them. I've never met,
Yeah. I think Jane Fonda is a good person. I'm not saying she's a bad person, but
yeah,
she was wrong, and her error cost lives, many, many, many lives, maybe millions.
yeah,
Right? Because we would have built nuclear power plants instead of coal plants, and there would have been less pollution. There would have been less respiratory disease and less preventable deaths from pollution. So yeah, I don't think she's a bad person, but she the longer she goes on without admitting that she's wrong, it's just, I think,
a stain. Yeah, it's
it's
a
because
stain.
it's difficult to admit that that your intellectual paradigm is wrong.
Mm.
That that's a difficult thing for someone's ego to bear, and I would hope that I could do that if I were presented with contrary information that said that nuclear was actually very harmful to the planet or to human civilization, and the data was sound, and I was able to come up with a new analysis and a new conclusion. Well, I would like to think that I would change my position on the matter, and that's what that's what it means to be human. We're wrong. We make mistakes, but we have the power to correct those mistakes and admit our errors. So
Most of us didn't get to accept nuclear just because it was a really cool masculine technology. I mean, not me in any case. I was worried about climate change. I still am, and I wanted to find a credible solution. And I looked at the 100% renewable plans of the most credible scientists on the planet.
yeah, you wrote a
And
book about
I wrote I wrote books about it, and I just couldn't make it work. So I decided, listen, I need to, because what I did was actually and this is something that I've never told anyone. I didn't have precepts that nuclear was bad, but I did have the idea. Well, if we aren't doing it, there must be a good reason behind it.
Mhm.
And once I realized what was behind all of it, I was like, well, to hell with it. I'm going to focus all my energies on getting nuclear accepted because this is just dumb what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why I got into it and stuck with it because, I looked at the fundamentals and I was just not convinced that the fundamentals were strongly indicating that this technology should be a failure.
Hmm.
In fact, it was the opposite, and that the reasons for the failure had nothing to do with the technical or economic aspects of it, and they had everything to do with politics and political machinations. So,
Ugly stuff. It's all ugly
yeah,
stuff, and it had nothing to do with the technology.
that's right. But in my mind, um, these are not the conceits of a rational investor
Hmm.
or a rational market. So eventually, rationality should always return to markets,
Hmm.
though they may be temporarily irrational. And so, that's the definition of a good investment, right? You find something that's not the way it should be, and you wait for it to correct itself. And the the the, the differential in there is what causes the gain.
Hmm.
So
It's an amazing story. Well, I want to thank you for coming on with me, Canon. I look forward to our next chat, even though it's going to be off camera. I'm sorry, people. But in any case, I would like to thank you. I would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And if you're still here, thank you all for watching. And may the strong force be with you. Bye bye.
Wow.